Hello and welcome to Faith and Honest Conversation. I'm Thomas Rowland and this is James Farrant.
Hello.
And we're here to talk as honestly as we can about our own faith and spirituality and experiences of it, and hopefully make it okay for you guys to have whatever your experiences are. So James, as kind of normal, we've got no idea where this is going.
Come unprepared.
But I really value those moments of just silent just before, like that. And what came into my head from that was like, I'm just me, and that's okay. That's enough. Yeah, I guess sometimes I feel like I should I want to take a place of being more than just me, like an expert or whatever, and being able to rest in, this is just me and what I'm experiencing and what's happening, and not just me, like that having an authority in itself, like a rightful authority in itself, I guess. But yeah, not trying to enlarge myself.
Yeah,
maybe. I don't know what came up for you or where you're at.
I really value that those moments of silence that we have. It just gives me time. When we did talk about it, maybe we talked about it last time. We were trying to remember what we talked about last time, and I think it was like,
we live very in the moment, don't we?
So in the moment, yeah. That sort of sinking down, that like real resting, and I've tried to do it a few times in the mornings, just on my own, and I set myself an alarm so that I'm then not worried about it. But I think I probably need to give myself either longer or do it at a different time of day or something, because I just find my mind wandering. Whereas when we do it here, it feels very relaxed. I feel like I have time. I don't feel any pressure or anything like that. I just feel like, that there's a real sense of space. And excuse me, sorry, there was an element of what you were saying just then that just resonated with me, which is that when you're saying that you are enough, and that you're just you're not trying to be an expert, or not needing to be an expert or like anything more than you are, but that has like value and authority and weight anyway, because you are you, but there's like a uniqueness to each person's experience. And I was like, oh, that's really nice. There's like a freedom to that, and a removal of like expectation, and a removal of of responsibility for you to be like more than you are, or something that you're not. Yeah, I really like that. And that there will be areas that you are an expert in, but that isn't like you're bringing all of you, not just that part of you. Yeah, so I think that really struck me.
Like, it's not that I like, it's not that I take away those expertise parts of me.
No, exactly.
That's part of who I am as well.
Yeah, and you don't have to try. Like, I got the sense when you were saying it that there was you're not having to step into a role, and I think that I obviously we both have been trained as counsellors, and I wonder in counselling, when we are with clients, that there's a stepping into a role
Mhm.
that does that take away from the authenticity, or is that authentic to the role, or does it create a like another boundary within the room that's like a safety element to it? Maybe it
Mhm.
does. That just sort of like floated through my head, maybe because we were talking about cancer before.
Mhm.
But perhaps like I was thinking more of just being in a role, or like, you know, when you're stepping into something,
Mhm.
how that can change us and how that influences us at work or something like that. If you've got a particular role at work that when you do that, how does being in that role, does that impact me mentally? Does that impact me spiritually, maybe? Um, and how do I impact that role? I guess that the role sometimes can become uh, maybe like an effigy of what it should have been, or a bit of a caricature of what it could be, and that we can go through the motions with stuff and become a little bit detached from it,
Mhm.
whilst we're almost acting it, almost play acting it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I What's going through my head is a conversation I had in my supervision session just this
Oh,
afternoon,
really?
um,
Yeah.
of distinguishing between this sort of authenticity towards myself, like being
Mm,
able to um, um, stand in who I am in that moment.
mm,
So that could be like being aware of what's going inside me,
mm,
and and who I am, and acknowledging it, maybe having the right understanding of what's going on, like it's an accurate empathy for what's going on inside
mm,
me. And but also there's there's this sense of this is okay, like like everything that's going on inside me is okay, and good, maybe, or a sort of validation of that somehow, that
mm.
I can stand in that self validation. I I don't know why I speak so ridiculously sometimes. It's like
I don't think
standing in
it is.
self-validation. Where like, why do I speak in those terms? But um,
I think it makes
that's
sense though.
that's how I speak. So, um, but then so there's that side, and then as we were talking about counselling, or
Mm,
therapy, that in that role, the other side is like, what then do I express or communicate of that?
mm,
Um, and that's largely determined by, what do I think is actually going to be helpful to the client,
mm.
or what do they need? Um, and what's about the client maybe, and what's just about me,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I don't know, what happened an hour before in my life or something, or something like my own hang-ups. So I guess there's a way of being, but all of that is about being authentic.
Mm,
um, and actually I think where I'm where my progress as a counselor or a therapist has been accepting that me being myself is almost the job. um
mm.
like what's most therapeutic is for somebody to meet somebody real,
Yeah.
um and if as much as I can't ask a client to be themselves or live more freely, if I can't do that in this relationship here and now. um I've just lost you.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
yeah, I was going to say I lost you for a second
Yeah.
there, Tom.
So
Yeah.
like I can't expect or ask or wish for a client to live more freely or
Mm,
more as themselves, whatever, or more authentically, maybe that's a good term, if I'm not being that with them there and then. So and I just think when you encounter somebody who's being really real and you experience them as, you know, really grounded in who they are, and also kind of some sort of transparency that they're showing you something of what's going on. Like, I think it's just safer for you, and you do grow much more.
So if you've got like that environment where someone is being honest and being, as you say, authentic, and true to who they are, and allowing you the space for that, then that's the role of the counsellor. That's the element there of creating that environment for somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's maybe it's more nuanced than that, maybe, that because I think we're all in this tension of being ourselves and being in relationship. So like being authentic and being in harmony, maybe, is like, I love these words. This is just, you know, I love the philosophy of it. So, but like, and maybe there's something there about the therapist just really demonstrating that it's possible to hold both of those things. Like, I can be really authentic in myself, and I can be in relationship with you. And I guess it's those two aspects. It's something about my relationship to myself and my relationship to you that makes up the whole sort of authenticity thing.
And is it when they're more aligned that's like the more authentic? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
it's so hard to define.
I guess
not
necessarily. Like, it could be that I can really stand in myself, but I'm not going to share much of what's going on in me, because that's not what the client needs at that point.
Yes. Just adjusting yourself to be what's most needed in the environment, or most therapeutic.
Yeah. Equally, I could be completely unaware of what's going on inside me, but kind of express that unawareness, sort of think it's something when it's not, and express that, or something like that. And that can be quite dangerous. And that's not really being authentic. That's just acting out, I think.
That's I think what kind of I'd be wary of in the counselling room is to have that sort of going through the motions of it, and then the potential for damaging your client as a result, or causing harm.
Maybe that's why I liked to be a therapist, because like the big thing is me. Like, I just get to be in a role where I get to just completely, like, the whole job is to understand me and to be more in touch with me. And maybe that's there's something there.
There's something really good about that, isn't there? Because the better the relationship that we have with ourselves, and the more self-awareness and I think in a personal, like, internal relationship that we've got, the more powerful we become in these situations, the more effective that we can become, because you can't work outside of the counselling room. You can't work on any other on the relationship with your client, but you can work on the relationship with you. So, and that like, I guess it's an inner harmony thing, isn't it? An inner relationship that you build, that then, and that strength, the solidarity of that, or the reassurance of that, is what comes out in the counselling room in whatever way is needed.
Like, I think people like that come across as really rock solid. And that makes it much safer for me. It's like I can do anything and you're going to be okay. You know, I can express anything, you're going to be okay.
Becomes
And
like a safe space.
and I think maybe taking those two aspects can be helpful when thinking about other roles.
Mm.
And it's like in other jobs, am I standing in who I am and what's going on in me? Can I inhabit that place? But also, like, how much of what's going on in me can I express? And maybe a role where there's like I can't express anything of me that's going on. Maybe that's that's going to take a lot of energy from me. It doesn't mean it's the wrong role. It could be doing lots of other stuff for me, but there is a cost to that.
Yeah, it's recognizing that, isn't it?
But also, if I'm standing in who I am, I get to recognize where in my role I can express and communicate what's really meaningful to me or what's going on in me. And so maybe those roles can become less of a caricature or whatever. Like I think of me in teaching, if I can stand in myself, then it becomes more possible to have a bit of meaningful contact with students. But if I can't, then teaching just becomes me shouting at kids. And I become the stereotype.
Or I suppose like another way of framing that would be like, as you say, the truly authentic self is when you're that safe adult for the young people who you're with, and then like the inauthentic is when there's the impression of that, but they don't know that necessarily. So I suppose it's like it's the communication of that in a relationship as well, isn't it? It's that communication and the expression of that in whatever area you're in, but especially in the counselling room is where I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's how it's like that's how it's like becomes like a part of the therapeutic process, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think what I'm coming to as well is that the other part of the therapeutic process is that we don't really change unless we have an encounter with something meaningfully different, or authentically different. Like there's something about my difference, me being a separate person from the client and having maybe feelings or thoughts that the client isn't having that can make it a meaningful encounter. Like if I was just completely the same as the client, then we'd both be stuck together.
You'd be a reflection of them rather than like or a mirror image of them rather than a reflection, a slightly distorted.
Maybe.
Not distorted is the wrong word. That's kind of got negative connotations, but like an altered perception, an altered reflection.
And reflections, they are the material making the reflection is integral to the reflection.
That it's not it is involved in that interaction in that relationship. It's interesting. There's something that we learned, and I can't remember if that was if we'd learned this separately or not, but it's something I remember from training about no, it was when we did, obviously it always comes back to IFS for me. It was when we were looking at internal family systems, and I think the person training us said that if anybody in isolation is perfectly fine. It's only when they come into relationship that any problems are interpersonal. They're not like they're not internal. But he used a term. What was it? Intrapsychic, or
within the psyche. as
Yeah,
opposed to
within the
Yeah.
psyche, they're instead they're interpersonal. Like so the problems only crop up when you've got like more than one other person there. If you're left to your own devices, then the problems go away.
Yeah.
Which I semi agree with. And actually, like the more you kind of pick it apart, the more you can argue for it as well as against it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was thinking, but when I'm on my own, I kind of deteriorate quite rapidly. But is that because of like relationships that I've had in the past?
Yeah.
And that's like the impact that's not.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
like I would be fine if I hadn't had those relationships in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. But also we do, like, maybe that's what we're saying. But like also the converse, I think, is true. Like we need the good relationships in the past to be okay with ourselves.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I do think we are largely relationally formed.
100%. Yeah, I think that's beyond anything else. Humans are relational, and that we will. I mean, I guess there's no way to have like a control group where you test this theory out, but there's so much like anecdotal evidence that you see and read about and hear about, and it's shown on TV and all this sort of stuff of like when certain elements of relationships aren't there or love isn't there, then people really deteriorate, really fall apart. And likewise, if somebody is very, very isolated, they will create things to have relationship with. I think thinking about the film Castaway, when Tom Hanks has got that's the football he finds and calls Wilson, like he creates something in order to have relationships so that there is something external. Yeah, it's really interesting.
And it shows like that's a real powerful drive.
Yeah.
Which is why authenticity can be so hard.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if I'm really being authentic, am I threatening this relationship?
Yes. Yeah.
And I really need relationship.
Yeah, that's like an instinctive thing within us.
Yeah.
The society, acceptance, culture, whatever thing we find ourselves in relationship with, that's precious. Don't rock the boat.
Yeah.
Don't too much yourself that you become unbalancing.
Yeah.
This is what goes through my head unintentionally, or like subconsciously. Yeah.
And I guess I'm also thinking about the faith element of this, and how authenticity and this balance with relationship plays out, or roles plays out in faith. I think I've noticed how much, and I think you've said before, I mean, you seem much more against it, but well, maybe that's unfair. I'm realizing myself how hard I find like being part of a faith group is like I find almost there's something now that I don't want to be. I find it quite hard to be part of it, like to be in that circle. And I think there's something there about it feeling quite constraining for my own like authentic faith, maybe. And I'm sure there can be communities where it is. Maybe community is what I'm trying to grapple with. Maybe that's a better word. But like communities where you can also be yourself, or you're like the uniqueness and difference of the individual is really valued as much. But there is such a drive towards being in relationship and maintaining the community that I think I find it quite hard now to be in that context.
I hear I hear you completely, and like there's that element of, well, yes, you might have these sort of views and we don't disagree with that, but there are some people here who do disagree with that, so actually you can't there isn't a space or a forum for you to air that or have that hold that belief so
Yeah.
open necessarily, and
Yeah.
that's where there's a clash between culture and authenticity, and in a relationship and out of relationship.
Yeah.
And certainly, there's like not purely like the issues in the church I was part of, the cord rupture. I had that from very, very early on when I first came to faith, and my own faith, like my expression of faith, was very, very different from a lot of the other people who I was encountering. And that there was an element of, I can't be too authentic about it, about what's going on for me, because these people just it would be anathema to them. It'd be like a completely different thing for them to comprehend, I suppose. It's very challenging. I was only really thinking about, I'm glad you mentioned about like a faith community. Partly not being in one at the moment means that I don't really consider it so much. All I was thinking was like the sort of higher power God element of like being authentic with God and being authentic with self, and that element of there's relationship.
And are we taking on roles in that relationship?
To take on a role, and what influences that, and what does what impacts that have by those around us and the relationships we've had in the past.
It's probably very the roles we take towards God or whatever are probably roles that we've learned to take towards others,
either figures of authority or parental figures, or however we personify God, if you like, or whatever shape God takes in our heads or in our minds.
And I'm just thinking this. Maybe this is what I was talking last week with prayer as well. That like a different view, like a view that I'm leaning into, or I'm appreciating at the moment, is a maybe mystical view of that God is already inside us. His throne is in our heart, sort of thing, or that's where and it's like, if I'm thinking of those two separate parts of authenticity, it's like, how on earth, like standing in myself is linked to standing in God. Like they can't, there's a good maths phrase, but that's just gone from me. Like, it's the same thing. It's the same. Like, if I'm standing in myself, I must be standing in God. If God is me, God is
me.
Like, something about my body being the temple of God, then somehow standing in my body and all the experiences that are going on in that moment is somehow, I can't separate that from God.
And the more authentic you're being, the more closely aligned with God you are.
So I guess for me, at least one significant part of prayer is not about is not about the other part of authenticity, which is communicating with somebody outside of myself. It's about the relationship with myself, which is where I believe God lives. It's that and it's so intertwined with self-honesty, or self-confession almost. It's like confessing to myself that I feel this, or that this is going on, or that I really want this, and like when I'm praying to God, like, God help me in this, it's also an appreciation that God already knows, like God, like it's so it's maybe it takes away that role sort of aspect that can come in. I don't know if that's clear or not.
It totally makes sense. It totally makes sense, and it's certainly that's where I like align most closely with, I suppose, with Christianity, is that the idea of God being an indwelling God, not being like something external to me, or something external to humanity, that God is over there somewhere, but God's here inside, and has always been here inside, and that, when we're talking about the sitting quietly, I settle down, and then I'm like, oh, that's because I'm really closely aligned right now. That's why I feel really close. That's why I feel really at peace, is because like my inner being is like aware again that, oh yeah, that God's here, God's with me. I
Yeah.
think, and this is probably a discussion for another time, but I really struggle with an external concept of God, a God outside, or a God of like, yeah, beyond the inner life. And I think that's maybe, I think I only just realized it when you were talking about that, and then reading like comments on online and so on, of people sort of being really challenging to people of faith, when they say, like, they pray for something super personal on it and it happens, but when they pray for something, but like huge, like external things aren't answered, or major sufferings aren't answered, and I've always struggled with that, and I think it's because like I can relate to the inner God, I can relate to this God that dwells inside, but an external, I really hesitate to use the words all powerful, because I think that the one inside is all powerful, but like an external, like maybe impersonal is the right term, God, I really struggle with, and I can't relate to.
I really want to ask loads of questions, and I'm really aware of time.
Yeah, leave you with a little bombshell there, Tom.
So, if there's any chance of us remembering for next week,
yeah,
we should really, because I think that's really, and I think that's what I was grappling a bit with last week, is when I was talking about prayer, that I really struggle with a sort of external person I'm speaking to. Like it feels so fraught.
Yes, yeah, I remember you saying that. Yeah,
and I think we've landed on the same sort of thing.
yeah,
And that feels like a really powerful experience for both of us at this point,
yeah.
about interacting with an external God. So we should definitely look at it next week, because it keeps coming up.
Internal versus external.
Alternatively, we can probably rest secure knowing that it will probably come up again.
I suspect so. I imagine that but as it's something that we both have either wrestled with, or it's been things that something that where we've landed, that it will come up again. And yeah, I guess we can trust it to our inner God.
That's it. I love it. I love it. Great. I've really enjoyed today, James.
Yeah, me too, Tom.
And
been
yeah, is there anything you want to finish with?
No, I think that's good. Like, we'll try and make a mental note and mark that internal, external relationship with God, interpersonal or impersonal. I don't know. We'll come up with some pithy expression, I suppose.
Great. Yeah, I think so. And I'm also, that we need to leave it. But I guess I'm hoping that I can get to a place where these things, like, they don't become one or the other. Like that God can be both,
more
sort of
than
thing.
One. Yeah.
But I'm not there yet. So let's leave it for another week. Hope you've really enjoyed the conversation as well. Or that at least you've found some of it helpful. maybe that's what I want to say. Or really agitated you and made you come into grips with some stuff going in you. I don't mind with that either.
Either way, get in touch.
Yeah, that's it. Great. Have a good week, guys. Take care.